I really don't think it's that crazy or that much of a shot in the dark to not only see the Twins make it to the ALCS for the first time since 2002, but to see them go all the way to the World Series for the first time since 1991. If you're breathing, like the video and subscribe if you haven't yet, or just wait to see if you enjoy the video and then make a decision. That works too. As like Superman said to Luke Skywalker in that Marvel movie, with great power comes great responsibility. And with my great power being able to shit talk teams and players to the promised land like I did with the Milwaukee Brewers and Francisco Lindor, it looks like it goes both ways too. My World Series pick Minnesota Twins have gone on to have one of the most disastrous late season collapses in recent memory. Everyone is losing their minds, including the announcers.
There's one sack bunt this year, and it's popped up and caught. Throw back to second, double play. Come on, guys. Can't happen. Cannot happen.
And depressing is a heavy understatement to just how bad this year has ended for the Twins, making another pick of mine look stupid. But I gotta give myself 5% credit, the other 95% no. But to be fair, the Twins did line up kind of the way I was predicting them to. They were a good team, in fact, the best team for a long stretch of time. One of my predictions for this year was for Carlos Correa to be much better offensively, and okay, yeah, duh. I'm not going to act like this was some groundbreaking take, but Correa was definitely overlooked heading into the season after his down year last year, and he's gone on to exceed even what I thought would come from him. Now, it does suck he was hurt for a lot of the year. That's an issue for sure, and could be moving forward, but when he's been on the field, he's not only been much better than last year, but he's been one of the best hitters in baseball this year, period. Not just shortstops. Put that together with his elite defense and you get the elite version of Correa we've seen in 2024. And another notable thing, the two best hitters on the Twins offense this year, the two veterans and highest paid guys, Correa and Byron Buxton, someone who's also unsurprisingly dealt with injuries, but when he's played, he's been a really good hitter. Overall, the offense, when I was pretty high on before the year, has been pretty good. Not elite, not a juggernaut, especially not with your two best hitters missing a good amount of games because of injuries, but it's been a good offense. They're very consistent with where they stand in pretty much every important offensive stat. They rank 11th in all baseball and OPS, batting average, on base percentage, and slugging percentage. And as for the pitching, it's pretty much the same story. Nothing special really, but it's pretty good. Definitely not bad. So when you look strictly at this Twins roster on paper and who's done what, it's a pretty good one. But it's also why these games aren't decided on paper. Why who the best teams aren't decided on paper. The Twins overall actually had the best record in baseball from April 18th to August 18th, going 64-43 during that span, which was 107 games. So for 66% of the entire season, you could have had a legitimate argument that the Minnesota Twins were the best team in baseball. Since that day, the Twins have lost 23 of their last 35 games as of the time of me making this video. And on September 2nd, according to Fangraphs, the nerdiest baseball site imaginable that makes my brain hurt whenever I attempt to go on it, so I never go on it, had the Twins with a 95.8% chance to make the playoffs. 95.8%. So how on earth do you go from having the best record in baseball for 66% of the season, having a 96% chance of making it to the postseason, to just completely falling apart? Well, I think I kind of figured it out. And it also answers a question I had, and I'm sure many others did, when the Twins had the best record in baseball for a period. In this more than a month's long stretch of games where the Twins have slowly collapsed, it's shown what they really are. It's exposed them. In the 35 games the Twins played from August 18 through September 26, more than half of those games were against teams who either are playoff bound or well above 500 at the time, like the Atlanta Braves. And how many of those games did they win? 2. Just 2. They lost 11 of those games against teams who were playoff worthy, and that's on top of the games they lost to teams that weren't playoff worthy. And this brings me to the question. When the Twins had the best record in baseball from mid-April through the middle of August, which is a good amount of time, I remember feeling that didn't feel right. I mean, we're not talking a couple weeks here. Usually when a team has the best record for that long of time, a 4-month span of time, it'll probably be noticeable, very noticeable, but it wasn't. The Twins never popped out as a true threat to anybody. Not that anyone dismissed them as a bad team or irrelevant or anything like that, but they just didn't seem that scary. And when you look back, even through that 64-43 stretch, there's a reason this was the case. There was a point this season early on, I'm sure most people forgot about, where the Twins won 12 straight games. 12 straight. That's a lot of games to win in a row. But when you see the teams they won those games against, it makes more sense. The first 4 were at home against the White Sox. They swept them, then went to Anaheim and swept the Angels in 3 games, then played the White Sox again, this time in Chicago, and swept them again, this time in 3 games before playing the Red Sox and winning the first 2 before losing the streak in the 3rd game. So the first 10 games of that 12-game streak were against the White Sox, a historically awful team this year, and the worst Angels team in franchise history. They went and took 3 of 4 from the Mariners and 2 of 3 from the Blue Jays before going on a 7-game losing streak. Okay, so just a week after being on a 12-game winning streak, mostly being wins against bad teams, the Twins went on a 7-game losing streak, mostly being losses to, you guessed it, good teams. The Yankees would come to town and sweep the Twins with ease, sending them off to Cleveland where they'd get swept again, losing the next game in DC against the Nationals before winning again. So that's 6 of the 7 losses in this losing streak to teams that ended up running away with their divisions. And what did they do once they started playing the Nationals and Rangers? Teams that aren't playoff teams, they won 4 of 6. And if you really go through the entire season, you'll see a theme. From April 18th through August 18th, like I said, the Twins went 64-43. Well, 41 of those 64 wins came from beating non-playoff teams. Now, winning a baseball game at the big league level at all is hard. And credit the Twins for taking care of the games they should be taking care of, beating the teams they should be beating. That's what good teams do. But I think this exposes what the Twins were all along. Good enough to hang in the race long enough to fool us into thinking they were a playoff team, when in reality, they weren't ever actually that good. They were never good enough to hang with the big boys, considering how much they struggled against actual playoff teams. So that's why they had the best record in baseball for so much of the season, yet didn't feel like it. Because they literally had the best record in the sport against under 500 teams. Nobody was better. The Twins they straight up took care of the bad teams like it was nothing. And considering how dominant they were against those bad teams, all they had to do was play right around 500 against the good teams and they'd easily be playoff bound. Right now, they would be. But considering they're almost 20 games under 500 against good teams this year, you get what's unfolded right in front of us. As the Twins' record got a little less easy in terms of opponents' record, the more the Twins started to sink. In July and August, the Twins only played 12 games against teams with losing records in those 2 months compared to the 39 games against teams at or above 500. So things flipped in the worst way possible. Other than the White Sox, who they took 5 of 6 games from in this span, the Twins went 21-24 against the other 14 teams played in the same span. And as for September, a month that began with the Twins having a 96% chance of making the postseason according to the nerdiest baseball site, the Twins haven't changed when it's come to how they are against the over 500 teams, but against the under 500 teams, they've actually regressed. They're now having trouble beating those teams, hence why this month has been the most disastrous and by far the worst of the entire season. Carlos Correa has since come back during this awful stretch, and it's looked exactly like this. Too little, too late. Correa's been great. He's actually been awesome since returning, and like I said earlier, he's been good as long as he's been on the field this year, but unfortunately, missing about half the season's worth of games isn't going to help much. Same with Byron Buxton, and as if things couldn't look any less stupid, let's go back to the middle of June for a second when Royce Lewis went 0 for 5 with a couple of strikeouts against the Rays, only for him to go 3 for 4 the very next day with a home run. And you know what he told the media afterward? He said this: "I don't do that slump thing. That's not a real thing for me." And he initially made himself look good with this statement after hitting a homer in his next 2 games following it, but skip ahead to now, and he's slumping pretty hard. Since the beginning of August, so for the last 2 whole months, Lewis is hitting just .220 with a .638 OPS, neither of which are good at all. His production has been way down since a good start to a season that's also been riddled with injuries, and at this point, he definitely needs to just shut his mouth. He had that slump comment, and if that couldn't have sounded and turned out any worse or make him look any dumber than it did, at the very beginning of July, so right before the All-Star break, Lewis told the media that the Guardians, who were in first place, aren't the Yankees of old and are about to have a downfall eventually. He said that. Skip ahead to today, and you have Royce Lewis, who said he never slumps in the middle of a long slump, while the Guardians, who Lewis said would have a downfall, never had a downfall, continued to stay in first place all year long, and won the division along with a first-round bye.
How'd that get in there?
Talk about bulletin board material. I mean, like, why would he say that? And the Twins pitching staff isn't that great, especially the bullpen, which has only really had one reliable dominant arm in Griffin Jax. Other than that, it's been shaky. But again, the biggest issue regarding this team is what they've been exposed as. A team that took great advantage of lesser talented ones, especially arguably the worst team in history that they got to play 13 times in the White Sox, only to get beat up by the big guns. Because they might have played the dreadful in-division White Sox 13 times and won 12 of those games, but they also played 13 games against the in-division Guardians. And how many of those games did they win? 3. They did win more head-to-head matchups against the Royals this year, 7 while losing 6, but it was also very top-heavy in a sense where the Twins ended up losing their final 4 games against the Royals, 3 in which came during their awful month of September, getting swept in Kansas City. And overall, against division-winning teams this year, across the whole league, the Twins went 11-24. And against teams over 500 all around the league, 40-58. It was actually kind of right in front of us all along, but it didn't become that clear until now, until their slow collapse out of a playoff spot that seemed almost guaranteed became as real as ever. And this really is a top-to-bottom organizational failure with a front office and ownership that definitely deserves blame. They didn't do much over the offseason to push off the momentum of what they did last year, and then they proceeded to not do really anything during the trade deadline this year. And as a result, the Twins eventually found out that 2024 was not going to go as smoothly as 2023 did. Because not only was Cleveland much better this year, but so were the Royals, and then before you could even fully grasp that, the frickin' Tigers came out of nowhere and passed you too. You get complacent with where you're at, this is the sort of thing that happens. One of the worst collapses to go down in baseball history, and a long winter ahead in Minnesota. Let me know your thoughts, and thank you for watching.